For months, the Spitfire Mark V had largely held its own over the Channel, but in the autumn of 1941, something new appeared. A German fighter that was faster, rolled quicker, and could dive away from a Spitfire with contemptuous ease. This new menace was the Focke-Wulf Fw-190, a radial engine killer nicknamed the Würger, the Butcher Bird. Its arrival didn't just challenge the Spitfire, it threatened to break its spirit and briefly shifted the balance of the Channel air war. Welcome to Historical Digs. For today, we uncover the story of that duel, a high-stakes technological arms race fought at 20,000 feet, where the future of Europe was decided by split-second decisions. The Focke-Wulf Shock. By late 1941, the pilots of RAF Fighter Command had developed a certain swagger, and for good reason. Their Spitfire Mark Vs had proven competitive, outturning the Bf-109F, though the 109F often held the speed and climb advantage. But in September of that year, the confidence began to fray. Reports trickled in from pilots describing encounters with a new radial engine German fighter that defied the rules. It was fast, heavily armed, and possessed a roll rate that made the Spitfire look sluggish. Wing Commander Robert Stanford Tuck, a seasoned ace who flew the 1941-42 sweeps, was one of the first to encounter it and barely escaped. This was the Focke-Wulf Fw-190A1, and its arrival was a tactical earthquake. The Air Fighting Development Unit of the RAF quickly issued a stark warning. The Fw-190 is considered to be superior to the Spitfire 5 on all points except turning circle. The psychological impact was devastating. For the first time since the Battle of Britain, RAF pilots were the underdogs. They were instructed not to engage the Fw-190 in a dive, as the German fighter's performance at high speed was so superior that it could simply pull away. Its blistering roll rate, a product of well-harmonized controls and robust construction, allowed it to snap into a turn or reverse direction with a speed that left Spitfire pilots firing at empty sky. The Butcher Bird's bite was as fearsome as its speed. By early 1942, most frontline Fw-190As carried 4 20mm cannons. The earliest A1s had 2. Its firepower was overwhelming compared to the standard Spitfire 5's 2 cannons and 4 machine guns. German pilots like the legendary ace Adolf Galland lauded the new fighter. He noted that the Fw-190 gave pilots an unprecedented sense of security and offensive power. It was a machine built for the hunt, a pure energy fighter designed for brutal high-speed passes. The shock culminated in February 1942 during the Channel Dash, when the Fw-190s of Jagdgeschwader 26 provided devastatingly effective air cover for the German battlecruisers Scharnhorst, Prinz Eugen, and Gneisenau as they escaped through the English Channel. The RAF's frantic attempts to intercept were torn apart by the Fw-190s and the ship's AA guns, which claimed dozens of British aircraft. The Focke-Wulf Shock was no longer a rumor. It was a bloody reality painted across the skies of Europe. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to Historical Digs. Your support keeps history's forgotten warbirds flying, not in the skies, but in memory. A Tale of Two Philosophies. The Spitfire and the Fw-190 were not just different machines, they were the physical embodiment of two opposing design philosophies. The Spitfire, born from the mind of R.J. Mitchell and developed by Joseph Smith, was an artist's creation. Its defining features was the beautiful elliptical wing that produced near-minimum induced drag for a given lift, helping its famed turning ability. It was a delicate instrument, built around the sleek, liquid-cooled Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Everything about it was optimized for agility and performance at altitude. It was a thoroughbred, a duelist designed to win graceful turning fights. Its narrow-track landing gear, while a weakness on the ground, was a necessary compromise for that perfect wing. In stark contrast, Kurt Tank's Fw-190 was a workhorse, a pragmatic brute forged for the realities of the front line. Tank famously said he wanted his fighter to be like a cavalry horse, tough, reliable, and able to operate in harsh conditions. Instead of a vulnerable liquid-cooled engine, he chose the powerful BMW 801, a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial engine. While this created more drag, it was often more resilient, capable of absorbing significant combat damage that would have silenced a Merlin. This ruggedness extended to the entire airframe. The Fw-190 featured a wide-track, sturdy undercarriage that made it far more stable on rough, improvised airfields. This practicality extended to the cockpit. Spitfire pilots managed separate propeller RPM and, on earlier marks, mixture, whereas the FW-190's Kommandogerät enabled single-lever engine control. The pilot simply moved one power lever, while the Kommandogerät handled most engine settings, freeing him to focus entirely on combat. The control surfaces were another point of divergence. The Spitfire's controls were light and responsive, but they grew heavy at high speeds. The FW-190 used a system of push rods and bearings, keeping controls crisp and roll rate excellent at high speeds. One was a rapier, demanding finesse. The other was a battle axe, designed for raw, devastating power. Britain's desperate answer. Faced with the FW-190's dominance, the Air Ministry and the engineers of Supermarine scrambled for a solution. The initial response was a series of stopgap measures. Some Spitfire Mark Vs had their wingtips clipped, shortening the wingspan to improve the roll rate at lower altitudes. While this helped, it was a patch on a gushing wound. What the RAF desperately needed was more power, especially at the medium altitudes where the FW-190 excelled. The answer was the Spitfire Mark 8, a substantially reworked Merlin 60 airframe intended as the long-term solution. But that was months, if not years away. Britain needed a miracle, and it needed it now. That miracle came from Rolls-Royce in the form of the new Merlin 61 engine. This masterpiece of engineering featured a two-stage, two-speed supercharger, which dramatically boosted its performance above 20,000 feet. The problem was that this larger, more complex engine was designed for the new Mark 8 airframe. In a stroke of wartime genius, or perhaps desperation, the decision was made to perform an emergency transplant. In early 1942, Supermarine engineers took a standard Spitfire Mark VC airframe and, with remarkable speed, modified its nose to accommodate the powerful new Merlin. The result was a hybrid, a mongrel fighter that looked like a Mark V but had the heart of a next-generation interceptor. It was designated the Spitfire Mark IX. The prototype first flew in February 1942, and its performance was a revelation. It could outclimb and, crucially, outrun the FW-190 at medium and high altitudes. Rushed into production, the Mark IXs reached No. 64 Squadron in July 1942. The effect on pilot morale was immediate. For the first time in nearly a year, they had a machine that could meet the Butcher Bird on equal terms. On July 30th, 1942, a Spitfire Mark IX of No. 64 Squadron shot down an FW-190, the first confirmed victory for the new type. The tide had begun to turn. The Mark IX wasn't just a new mark of Spitfire, it was Britain's answer, a symbol of rapid, desperate innovation that pulled fighter command back from the brink. The Duel evolves. The arrival of the Spitfire Mark IX did not end the rivalry. It merely reset the terms of engagement. The duel between the two fighters became a relentless, evolutionary arms race that continued until the final days of the war. As the Mark IX became more numerous, Focke-Wulf responded. The FW-190A series was continuously upgraded with more powerful engines and heavier armament, becoming a fearsome fighter bomber, or Yabo, that terrorized Allied ground troops during the Normandy campaign despite Allied air superiority. But Germany knew it needed an answer to the high-altitude performance of the new Spitfire and Allied bombers. The result was one of the most elegant and deadly fighters of the war, the FW-190D9, nicknamed the Dora. Kurt Tank replaced the radial BMW engine with a liquid-cooled 12-cylinder Junkers Jumo 213, giving the aircraft a distinctive long nose. The Dora was superb at medium to high altitudes. Entering service in late 1944, it gave Allied pilots a nasty shock and proved a worthy opponent, even for the P-51 Mustang. In response, Supermarine pushed the Spitfire to its absolute limits. The introduction of the Rolls-Royce Griffon engine, a monster of a power plant with 37 liters of displacement, created the Spitfire Mark 14. This was arguably the pinnacle of piston engine fighter design, a machine that combined the Spitfire's legendary agility with breathtaking speed and power. Griffon-powered Spitfires were formidable in 1944–45, and among the aircraft fast enough to intercept V-1s alongside Tempests, Mustangs, and Mosquitoes. By the war's end, both aircraft had evolved into something their original designers could scarcely have imagined. The FW-190, the low to medium altitude brawler, had evolved into a higher altitude capable interceptor, with a TA-15-2H assuming the extreme altitude role. The Spitfire, the graceful dogfighter, had become a powerhouse capable of chasing down cruise missiles. This rivalry was a microcosm of the entire war, a frantic, brutal, and technologically explosive contest. Neither aircraft truly made the other obsolete. Instead, they pushed each other to greatness, forcing constant innovation in a deadly aerial duel that became one of the defining legends of the Second World War. So, was the FW-190 truly the superior fighter, a masterpiece of pragmatic engineering, or did the Spitfire's constant, brilliant evolution prove that adaptability is the ultimate weapon? Let us know which of these legendary aircraft you think ruled the skies in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories about the machines that defined history, make sure you've subscribed to Historical Digs and have hit that notification bell. Until then, remember, history is full of hidden gems if you know where to dig.